Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, one of the newest roles to be created as a result of the AI revolution is that of Chief AI Officer. So what does the role entail, and why should businesses consider recruiting for this position? Well, Barry Guiney is the Technology and IT Services Partner with Odgers Berndtson, and he joins us now to tell us all about it. But Barry, start by telling us about your time with Microsoft and what you learned from this early phase of your own career.
Yeah, interesting place to start, Karl. I guess I kind of think about it nowadays as I suppose I grew up in Microsoft. And, you know, looking back, it was a fantastic experience and a great place to really, I suppose, cut your teeth in I suppose, the global technology world. And with what was, you know, very much then, I suppose, is now to, you know, one of the real global leaders in its space. Really enjoyed the culture there, really enjoyed working with the Americans. You know, kind of an interesting dynamic whereby, you know, you're working with one team in Ireland, the next team is coming on stream 4 or 5 in the evening, and you're starting to get stuck into work and work late at night sometimes with the people on that side of the water. But I suppose when I look back on it now, I suppose, you know, where we were in Microsoft, like it was very much kind of system and process driven. And I probably the key learning I got from it really is kind of how to find faster, better, cuter ways of doing things, let's just say. And one of the kind of aspects I loved, I suppose, was that, you know, no new idea was ever a bad idea until you got the chance to thrash it out and kind of validate it. And I think, you know, what you hear about Microsoft, about and I suppose many companies like that now, you know, the type of supports they put in place, you know, the canteen facilities, you know, the recreation areas, you know, everything to allow you to do work, is that they create the environment for you to work as hard and as well as you possibly can. And I think they're really successful in doing that.
And provide us with an overview of Odgers Berndtson and a service which it provides to its clients.
Sure, Karl. So Odgers Berndtson, we're a global executive search firm. So executive search is, I guess, a specialized form of recruitment. And it's usually deployed for senior roles in an organization, those that have a real strategic impact on the business. And it's a very much consultative approach, you know, would be described as a professional service. And it's one where you develop real strong relationships with both the client and the candidate pool that you present to them. And what we do is we take the client from an understanding of the market, introducing them to the best available talent, and manage the process right through to ensure a successful placement, which it does, of course, include acceptance of an offer once it has been made.
So what is the appetite for board and C-suite appointments in Ireland right now?
Yeah, so I think, you know, judging by, I suppose, how our business is doing at the moment, it's quite positive. And I say that, I suppose, across industries. And I suppose one of the things that we're lucky about in our company is that we do work across quite a number of different industries. I'm quite focused on the technology sector myself. We're also very strong in areas such as consumer goods, areas such as retail, areas such as financial services. And we also work in the public sector. So it means that really, you know, for example, the tech sector is a little bit constrained at the moment, which mightn't be a surprise to your listeners. But it does mean that we can always take advantage, I suppose, of the position that we have in other sectors at that stage.
Given the current state of the market, are you finding that you're having to go overseas to attract talent?
Yeah, well, I guess part of our, I suppose, USP to our clients, Karl, is that every search assignment, as we call it, does include research of international markets, and we produce or provide some talent, some candidates always from international markets. And what that does is it makes the client, I suppose, very comfortable that they're seeing the best of what's out there, the best in terms of fit for their organization, for how they've designed that organization, and for the role they're looking to fill. And you will find, I suppose, that at the moment there's plenty of talent available in Ireland, certainly in the tech sector, and there has been a right-sizing in some of the larger international tech firms, and that has made some candidates available who have real experience operating at a genuine scale, both of operations and in terms of revenue lines managed. And that talent is now more available to Indigenous Irish firms that may have been in the past, particularly when we had the real growth in the tech sector, let's call it, in the pandemic years.
And talk to us about the growing usage of artificial intelligence in the corporate world and how this has created a new role within organisations.
Yeah, so look, AI, I guess, is probably the most noteworthy development from a technology point of view and possibly from a business point of view in recent times. I think most businesses are experimenting with it in some way. The introduction of course, ChatGPT and other large language models has made it accessible to us, maybe the non-technical users. But it's becoming more and more prevalent, I suppose, in a vertical situation as well, where specific types of AI are being developed to drive businesses forward, which could be, for example, in the manufacturing space. It could be maybe in the e-commerce space for forecasting, pricing algorithms, that sort of thing. And that, I suppose, introduction or transformation of these companies has started to introduce a leader for AI within the businesses. And that's often been referred to now as a chief AI officer.
What is the role of the chief AI officer within the organisation, and what are the key responsibilities that are attached to this position?
So I think what we're seeing, I suppose, and that's with our business across the different jurisdictions globally, we're seeing the chief AI officer being deployed in different scenarios, Karl. So, there's the board level or C-suite chief AI officer, where they're starting to build their own portfolio of activities and responsibilities within an organization. But we're also seeing it where the chief AI officer is reporting maybe into the CIO, so they're part of the technology function, or even also seeing it as reporting into the chief data officer, if those type of roles precede the chief AI officer in an organization.
And what skills and attributes should someone in this role possess?
So I think the key thing is generating business value from an AI application. So I mentioned a scenario earlier for different industries, but the ability to be able to deploy AI, for example, for forecasting, using predictive analytics, for pricing models, be that in e-commerce, maybe in the airline industry, maybe for concert tickets, as we've heard of in Ireland in recent times. It can also be about having the technology, I suppose, capability to be able to integrate AI into the existing technology estate. That would maybe enable the business to learn from the data or the systems that it has and start to see a compound value from the information in the business as a strategic asset.
And of course, we're still in the early days of AI development, but how is this position likely to evolve as AI becomes more prevalent in the workplace?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question, Karl. And I suppose I look at it through the lens of the chief data officer. So my last role, I suppose, in the business world, in the technology sector, was that of a chief data officer before I entered the world of executive search. And it was something that was very popular, 5-10 years ago, certainly very newsworthy. But I start to see now more and more of the data function is starting to be wrapped into the chief information officer's ownership. So it's becoming part of the wider technology estate. And I suppose what the question is AI, is it going to stand on its own 2 feet within the organization, or is it going to become, intrinsically, I suppose, deployed within all areas of the business, within all functions, within all manufacturing, within all of the technology estate? And if that's the case, then will it become more of a chief transformation officer type role that might be in existence now?
And how wide-ranging are the sectors that are currently employing a chief AI officer? And is their type of role more likely to be found within a multinational environment?
I think it's both in the startup world and in the multinational environment, Karl. So, for example, if you look across the Irish market, probably the majority of chief AI officers are actually founders of their own startup, which is a business that is delivering some form of AI-enabled technology or AI-enabled service. In the multinational sector, we're seeing it, the AI officer being, I suppose, employed in different ways. In our team in the UK, and we're currently recruiting for a chief data and AI officer in the health insurance space. We're also recruiting for a chief AI officer in the global advertising space. And our team in India is responsible for searching for a partner in artificial intelligence for one of the big 4 advisory firms. In continental Europe, with our German colleagues, they're involved in a couple of positions whereby, for example, you're now seeing a chief marketing and AI officer for a banking business, or also the combination of chief finance and AI officer profile. So these are different kind of, I suppose, ways to spin the role or and to introduce AI, I suppose, into leadership in the business.
And are companies struggling to recruit people to fulfill this emerging corporate role today?
I would say it's definitely a challenge. The available talent is limited. The traditionally, I suppose, when you have a new kind of technology space and you're looking to promote that type of leadership, I suppose, in a company, often what's missing is the kind of bedrock of leadership. The impact someone would have in an organization, the gravitas, the leadership, the strategic thinking, that sort of thing. So it's being able to combine those type of attributes with, the core skills, the technology skills within AI. That's going to be the real challenge for our businesses.
And in recent weeks, we've heard of large tech companies such as Amazon mandating their employees to return to their offices. Do you expect that a full-time return to the office is now inevitable as a result?
I don't know is the honest answer, Karl. I think it will be case by case. I don't think that it will be, across economies. I think in Ireland there will still be many businesses that support hybrid or distributed companies, that sort of thing. I do think it's really interesting. I think that, it is definitely going to have an impact on, I suppose, the available talent for a business. So, if someone has to be on site in a particular location, 5 days a week, then, it's going to be much harder for them to commute, particularly if they've got, for example, a family situation or a carer situation. So that's one thing companies have to be careful of, is do they rule out talent and potentially do they rule out talent that would be considered, part of their diversity goals. So, for example, working mothers and the like. So that's something to be considered. There's another kind of school of thought which I think is very interesting is for someone like me, I suppose, who's I suppose relatively established in their career, it's probably not going to change that much from now in. My children are starting to grow up. I found my place to live and things like that. So things are fine for me. But we have to ask ourselves: do we maybe owe it to the younger generation, those who are entering the workforce, those who need to learn the lessons that we learned, those so-called water cooler moments? What can you learn from the expert in the office by being next to them in the office? And not only that, giving people literally a work life. Do the younger generation, do they need to be in the office to meet their friends? To create new networks, if they've come from another area, another city, what have you, is this something that is going to be a huge benefit to them? Something that we experienced, I suppose, as we were growing up, but it was run of the mill because it was just the way everything was,
It's an interesting point that you make, Barry, because I think in some respects an office environment is a community of learning, especially for those that are starting out in their career. But ultimately won't it come down to whether or not those candidates see the value in that?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think, I suppose we're then into it needs to work both ways, right? And actually, probably educating the younger workforce in terms of what they do get to benefit from it is probably something that businesses need to do. Going back to kind of the opening line of the question as such is, will it impact companies' ability, I suppose, to bring in the right talent? So fundamentally, people are, hugely influenced by what we would call the employer brand. And we kind of talked about it when I talked about my time at Microsoft and what have you. A lot of the things that I mentioned would be what would be considered to be part of the Microsoft brand. So this is also part of the employer brand. Is, what kind of flexibility are you going to offer? What are the benefits to someone from being on site? Everything that goes with that. And I suppose the onus will probably come upon the companies to start to communicate that with their staff and I guess with their potential staff over time.
And of course, that's all to do with attracting talent, but just as importantly, if not more importantly, it's about retaining talent. So what impact could such a move in bringing all staff back into an office 5 days a week have on an organisation's retention rate?
Yeah, I guess it can only reduce the retention rate at this point in time. Maybe over time that will correct, and those that are happy to be in the office let's call it full-time, will ultimately self-select in terms of those who have remained. So I suppose, there might be an initial decrease in retention rate, increase in attrition, but possibly then that increase in attrition will drop off over time. And look, markets tend to correct themselves. If you consider talent to be a market, and I suppose we do talk about it like that, which hopefully is a positive, then potentially the market will figure that out, and new people will enter into a geographic region and be the people who are happy to be on site and in the office, for that fixed time, the 5-day week.
For those of our listeners that want to move up the ladder in terms of their own career, in terms of progression, or indeed want a change of career, and you've piqued their interest this morning in terms of this new Chief AI Officer role, what advice have you got for them? I
think the number one thing is to figure out, I suppose, what's true to oneself for each person. And that's something I've probably learned in my own career. Because I think that the importance of that is that it helps you end up in a situation that's then sustainable. Because if you are doing something, working at something that's true to your own values, true to your own ambitions, then it is something that you will invest in yourself. It will help you, ride over the various obstacles that will be, that will arrive, in your work situation on an ongoing basis, and help you, as I said, I suppose have the grit and determination to work through things.
And how did you figure that out yourself?
I think I'm still learning, Karl. I think I'm still learning. But I think, I've, I suppose, been lucky in that I've worked in a number of different roles. After Microsoft, I was in maybe 3 different early stage scaling businesses in very different technology domains, and very different cultures, very different organizations. And I guess either something I brought to it or I learned from it was the adaptability and the ability to always kind of maybe find the next step forward and the next way of doing something new. And I guess, that's the biggest thing, I suppose, that I take myself now. Effectively, I'm 5 years into a new career with Odgers Berndtson. Feel very privileged to have had that opportunity, very much enjoying it. And yet I know, we've talked about AI extensively today. No change bigger than this has been around in our career times that will require us to adapt and evolve over the next couple of years. So I guess I hope I can still continue to put maybe one foot in front of the other and keep going.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Barry Guiney, Technology and IT Services Partner with Odgers Berndtson, and I'd like to thank Barry for his insights into this emerging role.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.